What's up, people? Just giving you a little heads up before today's video starts. I do have a property for sale in Kentucky, Western Kentucky. Special piece of property, 150 acres, over 40 acres of tillable throughout the entire parcel. Super cool food plotting system, big old bucks, and soybeans are going in this year from the farmer. It is going to be a special place. It already is a special place. It's going to continue to be a special place. World-class deer. If you guys want more information on it, whitetaillandmanagement@gmail.com. Let's get into it. How much does an ATV or a UTV impact the deer herd on your given property? I've seen it both ways, guys. I'm here to talk from experience. So at this point, probably visited, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 properties. We're in the midst of it right now, where I'm traveling throughout most of the country. Been to a couple states already this year. And the whole point of me bringing that up is that I get to see a lot of different scenarios. I get to see the guy that owns 10 acres, and I've gotten to see the guy who owns 5,000 acres, and I get to see how they travel through these properties, how they manage these properties, and the different things that they're doing on these properties, and how it affects the deer herd. So at this point, I got quite the amount of information that I can plug into a mental algorithm and say, this seems to work more often than this, and this seems to work more often than that. And there are two different variables when it comes to ATV, UTV usage that I think about, or two different scenarios. The first scenario where I tend to see, if I had to guess why these deer freak out over ATV, UTV usage, I go to some properties and they're only 40s, maybe they're 80s, maybe they're 120s. They're not huge properties, but they're good sized properties. And every time those deer see that UTV, or the side-by-side or the ATV, they seem to be running off like crazy. And I think, if I had to guess, to a certain extent, they're associating that with danger. Now, why would they do that? They see vehicles up and down the road. They see you driving around these things all summer long. But for some reason, guys, they're deathly afraid of these things. And what it comes down to, I think, is there's generally, for me kind of picking away and asking the questions to these clients, is there's generally a problem neighbor, as far as management goes, and he's just like a type of guy who wants to shoot what he wants, and that's fine. We're not even going to get into that, but maybe he's doing some illegal things. Maybe he's a farmer, and he doesn't necessarily love all the deer on his crop fields, and he's either running deer off with the side-by-side four-wheeler, or worse, on the four-wheeler, or side-by-side. And then all of a sudden, these deer start to associate these machines with danger, and it seems like even though you're the guy who spends a lot of time on your side-by-side, on your property, chainsaw and all these things, those deer are always taking off. It's not necessarily your fault. It's the neighbor's fault who's kind of abusing the property to a certain extent, or abusing the resource, chasing deer, maybe shooting deer off of the side-by-side, and then they associate that with danger. The other scenario that I tend to see where deer are deathly afraid of these things is where you got the crazy neighbor kid who likes to go rip out the four-wheeler at dusk once he gets off of school. Now, I'm not mad at that kid. At least he's outside playing. But at the same time, if you're managing for deer next door, they associate that with danger when that thing is running rampant up and down the property line, zipping from property line to property line. Now, the other scenario that I do see is where that guy doesn't exist, where that neighbor doesn't exist. And I've been to numerous properties where even as we creep through the property and sometimes stop, and those deer are 15, 20 yards away, they don't seem to mind. You can use these things, and in fact, in those given scenarios, I would expect you to use these things to get from point A to point B, even during the season in a lot of scenarios, because they don't associate it with danger. They see it all the time. You're out there working in the summer, and because you don't have that crazy neighbor, they don't look at that thing as danger, okay? Which is awesome. So now we can use it as a tool to get in and out, even push deer off the food plot at the end of the night, have the wife come through if you can, or your son or your daughter or whoever you're hunting with, come through and push the deer off the food plot and use it as a tool. But in that scenario where you guys have that crazy neighbor, this is a hard one. And that's a scenario in which I would almost tell you to do one of two things when hunting. One, walk to your stands, which I don't necessarily love doing all the time, because let's say we have a long walk back to a tree stand. It takes 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes of scent dispersal. That's 30 minutes of boot scent hitting the ground that's going to be there for the next 24 hours that a deer can pattern you and figure out what's going on, especially for hunting big mature deer. But now if we're at least using option B in this given scenario, which I would say would be an e-bike, you're not laying down the boot scent. You're getting from point A to point B relatively fast. And at the end of the day, you're just not putting as much pressure on the property. but you're still zipping through it real fast. And even if they do see you, hopefully you kind of catch them off guard, where if you're moving along at a 5-10 mile an hour clip, they just watch you go by. They watch you go by, watch you go by. All right, he's no longer a threat, he's gone. Maybe they never even get up out of their bed. So I see these scenarios a lot, guys, and this is me doing my best job to put my thumb on it. When I see these deer are running away from the side-by-side as we're touring around the property, and I just happen to ask you, if you're a future client, hey, how are the neighbors? What are the neighbors doing? And it's insane how many times, you know, after I ask that and we see these deer running off, I got a crazy neighbor kid always riding the dirt bike, or you got a neighbor who's a farmer, he don't love deer. Well, now you guys need to look at those given scenarios and decide how you're going to use your equipment, your ATVs, your UTVs appropriately, so that you can have the most success in and out of season, especially in season. And up your odds of killing that mature buck. And now we can use some of these different things or these scenarios as tools to ultimately get us in and out. You just need to understand your given scenario, guys. So sometimes ATVs can be bad and UTVs can be bad, but sometimes they can be good.